Hello, and welcome to our panel discussion on acculturation and learning English. We kindly request your attention for a brief moment in the spirit of transparency and utmost respect for our community. We have some information we'd like you to read on this disclaimer screen. By taking a few moments to read through this disclaimer, you empower yourself with important information regarding the boundaries of our knowledge-sharing environment. We would also like you to take a moment to read through this slide, and then together we're going to embark upon some exciting topics in early childhood education. So this panel of experts was created to provide real-world examples of two very important topics in early childhood education. The topics of discussion today will be challenges and issues involved in learning English and possible ways to help students who are going through the rejection phase of acculturation. All right, so let's go ahead and get started. Dr. Lopez, would you like to introduce yourself?
Absolutely. Thanks everyone for having me here. I'm Dr. Holly Lopez. I'm faculty here at UAGC, and I am also a program chair, and I'm very passionate about supporting non-traditional families, especially those who are non-native speakers. So I'm looking forward to partaking in today's discussion.
And my name is Lori Tess, and I am an adjunct professor, faculty member here at UAGC, and also a recently retired elementary school teacher where I was a reading specialist and EL teacher. And like Dr. Lopez, very passionate about our multilingual learners and supporting them and their families. So I'm happy to be here today.
Thank you so much for being here. So when an educator says they're teaching English language learners, other people might say, well, they just need to learn English. But it's not that simple. So let me ask you, what are some challenges and issues involved with learning English? Lori, go ahead.
Okay. So I hear this a lot, and I have heard it a lot throughout my career. And I have had to tell myself to be a little patient when I hear that, because I think we need to educate people about some of those challenges that come with learning a new language. So I think one of the biggest challenges is that English is not a phonetically friendly language at all. And as a reading specialist, I saw this all the time. So for example, in the English language, we have 5 vowels, and even on their own, they make 2 sounds, a short and a long sound. When we combine those vowels, we have 20 different sounds in the English language. And so unlike some other languages like Spanish, which I'm more familiar with, those vowels say what they say. And so that is challenging our sentence structure, our grammar, our word order. They're just challenging, and they're challenging for English speaking students. So that's the first thing I think we have to be aware of. The second thing is that I don't think people understand how long it really takes to learn a second language. We can, and I like to use the example, let's say that you were transferred to Germany because of your job, and you and your family had to go. And in order to be successful at your job and for your kids to do well in school, they had to speak German. And just how difficult that is. So what people I don't think realize is you might be able to pick up pretty quickly that social language, that conversational language. But in order to learn the academic language or the language of a workplace environment, that can take 7 to 10 years and maybe longer depending on previous schooling. And so I think one of the first things we have to do is educate our educators about that and other people, because I don't think they realize that. And then finally, I think one important piece of that is you might hear a group of people out, maybe at a restaurant or at the store, and they're speaking their native language with one another. And people make assumptions that they don't know English, or they'll make the comments they should learn English. And what we have to respect is that that's still their culture, that's still their heritage. And we need to honor that and respect that that home language is still very important to them. And so that's something I'm really passionate about. And I'm trying to make sure that I just really educate people about those points. So,
I love that you say educate the educators because that's exactly what we're doing here.
right.
So
And I know from my own experience working with classroom teachers, they don't know what they don't know. So
right.
that's our responsibility. I truly believe that. Yeah.
And also for any of us adults who have tried to learn another language, I know how tough it is.
Very
But we
difficult.
don't think about that. We don't think about that. That is something to consider.
Right. Yep.
Holly.
I would love to also add, I completely agree with you, Tess, we need to educate our educators about how valuable dual language learning is. People sort of see it maybe as a negative or as an extra task. And what we don't realize or what we know now is that people who are dual language learners have better neuronal connectivity and better outcomes with things such as problem solving. And so we want to promote dual language learning as much as possible and get away from this very old idea, which many of us heard when we first started being teachers, which is it's too hard for children to learn two languages at once. And that's not correct, right? Now we have the research that shows actually, a child may be in a silent phase. They're taking in information. They're still learning, and you're not hurting their development by exposing them to two or more languages at one time. And I think this is important for teachers and educators to know, but also for families, because I would work with families and they would come into my classroom and say, just speak English. Don't worry about the home language. And I want to say, no, there's a role for both languages here in this classroom. And not just to support identity development, but to support cognition and neuronal development, right? Brain development. So I think that there's room for lots of education in different areas.
Those are great things to remember. Okay, so we're ready for our second question, and Laura, you'll go first. What are some ways to help students who are going through the rejection phase of acculturation?
I think again, I'm going to go back to the first thing we have to do is make teachers aware of what that is, because I know when I first became an EL teacher, I wasn't familiar with that phrase. And over the years, it's different in different districts, but in my district, we have had a lot of newcomers. And so I am seeing more of that rejection of the new culture. And I think what we have to be aware of is that many of our students who are newcomers are coming with a lot of trauma involved in their journey here. And that's compounded by trying to become part of a new culture. So I think first we have to make teachers aware that this is something that's a real thing. And then I think we have to know what that might look like, because a lot of times the behaviors the students exhibit, people think they might be, just defiance or behavioral issues. So we might see things like sadness, depression, shutting down, refusal to cooperate, crying, frequent illness, and those can look like a lot of other things. But if we have a newcomer who's doing that, we need to dig a little deeper. So I think one of the ways we can help our students is to dive deep a little bit into their story and find out about their culture and their journey. And then I think as we begin to work with that student, the number one thing is creating a nurturing and compassionate environment. They need to feel safe. They need to feel welcome. So greeting them with a smile, calling them by name, allowing them to speak or write in their home language, and offering them resources. And then that includes the family, not just the student. And then keeping the correct people in the loop, the guidance counselor, the school psychologist, because as I said, a lot of these students are coming from some real trauma, and that's exacerbated by the fact that they're trying to adjust to a new culture. So just being as compassionate and kind, as welcoming as we can be.
Holly.
I love, Tess, that you talk about really supporting children's identity holistically, right? So there's a team approach to it. I think that's so important. One thing I would love to point out about the rejection of acculturation process is I would love for us to even move away from this word acculturation. Acculturation really has to do with the blending of cultures, which means, and it comes from this idea that cultures become a melting pot. So your culture sort of melts in with the other culture and sort of loses its integrity, just becomes part of the whole. And the problem with that and the problem with acculturation is that our goal is that we really want to preserve children and families' identities, right? So we want to approach it less like acculturation, but more that we are supporting integration, successful integration into a new cultural environment, right? So that we're supporting their identity, and we want to think about it as more of a salad, right? So each piece of your salad has its integrity, right? And its own identity, and it just becomes a part of a sort of beautiful, nutritious meal, right? So there's no losing of anything. People are really just gaining from each other, but still keeping the integrity of their identity. So that's my small issue with acculturation, but I completely agree with doing anything we can do to help children keep their identity and feel valued at school, and there is a place for that at school. I think is critical to working with dual language learners and non-native speakers.
And this is why we do this expert panel, right? Everyone brings something different and different backgrounds. So ladies, thank you so much for being here today. This has been wonderful information that will be helpful to all of our students and anyone watching.